All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on a system that produces results so consistent you almost have to see them to believe them. We're talking about the hidden mechanics that drive the federal conviction rate and, believe it or not, the absolutely crucial role defense lawyers play in keeping that machine running. Let's dive in.
So let's just start with the number 99.5%. That's the overall conviction rate in the federal criminal justice system year in and year out. And yeah, that includes guilty pleas, which are the vast majority of cases. But think about that for a second. A number that high and that stable. Doesn't that seem a little too perfect?
And that really brings us to the core idea here, which is kind of inspired by the whole Bernie Madoff scandal. See, financial experts knew Madoff was a fraud because his investment returns were impossible. They were way too steady. Real markets are chaotic, they're unpredictable. Well, the source material we're looking at argues that the exact same logic applies here. A truly fair justice system, filled with unpredictable people and messy facts, should have unpredictable results. A 99.5% conviction rate isn't a sign of incredible efficiency. It's a massive red flag that the game is rigged to produce one specific outcome.
So the big question is, how on earth is that possible? Well, to understand it, we have to start with the official story. You know, the public-facing reason for why things are the way they are, especially when it comes to how defense attorneys get paid.
The key piece of the puzzle is something called a contingency fee. You've definitely heard of it from personal injury lawyers on TV. We don't get paid unless you win. But, and this is critical, in criminal defense, that is strictly forbidden. A lawyer is not allowed to have a direct financial stake in you being acquitted.
And, you know, the official reasons for this ban sound really noble. The American Bar Association talks about preventing conflicts of interest, about how a person's liberty isn't some poker chip you can gamble with. It's supposedly to stop lawyers from getting overly aggressive just to chase a paycheck. And from a practical standpoint, it's true. An acquittal doesn't magically create a pile of money to pay a lawyer with. On the surface, you hear all that and you think, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But this is where we have to stop and ask the really tough question. When you look at the outcomes, when you look at that 99.5% number, are these rules actually protecting the defendant, or are they protecting something else entirely?
So now, let's go beyond the official story and look at the structural reality. This is where we get to see how the system's actual incentives, the ones working behind the scenes, really shape what happens.
And this, right here, is the central conflict. The system tells us that a direct financial incentive to win a case for your client is unethical. It's banned. But the accepted model, paying a flat fee, creates a different and very powerful incentive to close the case as fast as you can. And that's the fastest way to do that? A plea bargain. So just think about that. An incentive to win is considered a dangerous conflict of interest, but an incentive to plead out is just standard operating procedure. So let's break down what that fluffy structure actually encourages. The system rewards speed over doing a deep, thorough investigation. It rewards keeping things smooth and avoiding friction with the prosecutor and judge. And what does it punish? It punishes the risk of going to trial. It punishes zealous, time-consuming defense work, turning it into what is essentially charity for the lawyer. The financial current is pulling them powerfully down the path of least resistance. This quote just nails the hypocrisy of it all. The official story screams, liberty is not a commodity. But the reality is that liberty gets priced every single day, just implicitly. Its price is determined by how much work is economically rational for a lawyer, how much risk their small practice can afford to take, and whether going to trial is even financially survivable for them. And this whole situation leads to a really profound paradox for the defendant. The system says you have a right to choose your lawyer, but as we're about to see, that choice might just be an illusion.
Here's the thing. You can choose your lawyer, absolutely, but you can't choose the system they're forced to operate in. Every single lawyer you're allowed to hire, every member of the bar, is trapped in the exact same structure, facing the exact same rules, and the same financial pressures we just talked about.
It's a trap, really. The defendant is left with only two choices. The first is to hire a lawyer who is, by definition, an insider, someone who is institutionally chained to the system's rules. The only other choice is to represent yourself, which immediately makes you a total outsider, someone with basically zero credibility in the courtroom. There is no door number three. So what happens when this whole constrained system leads to a bad defense? You'd think there'd be an escape hatch, right? An appeal? Well, the system has an answer for that, too. It's got a kind of insurance policy to make sure the convictions it produces are protected. That insurance policy is called the Strickland Standard. To prove your lawyer was ineffective, it's not enough to just show they made mistakes. Nope.
You have to prove their performance fell below prevailing professional norms. And that last phrase, that's where the whole game is playing. And this reveals this perfect self-validating loop. It's almost beautiful in how it works. Step 1. The system incentivizes lawyers to be passive, to not rock the boat. Step 2. Over time, this lawyer passivity just becomes the normal way of doing things. It becomes the prevailing professional norm. And then step 3, the courts look at that norm and use it as the benchmark for what's reasonable. So the underperformance the system creates is then used to judge what's competent. It's a completely closed loop. So what's the ultimate result of all this? It's simple. The system itself is completely insulated from risk. The incentives, the legal standards, they all work together to protect convictions and keep the line moving. Accountability is spread so thin it disappears. And the defendant? The defendant is the one who absorbs the entire cost of this design.
And so we're left with this one last huge question. The whole point of the Sixth Amendment, the whole reason we have defense lawyers, is to be a check on the power of the government. But if that's the goal, why is the system designed so that the only people allowed to defend us are institutionally, financially, and professionally aligned with the very state they're supposed to be fighting? It's the central contradiction that explains that staggering conviction rate. A closed loop where the defense, meant to be an independent shield, has become just another gear in the machine.